What's up, Barnhill family, and welcome back to your home for all things combat sports.
Yo.
So the internet never fails. You know, Khamzat Chimaev's coach posted a story on Instagram, I believe it was, and it was a picture of a laptop. He was basically doing some research on Hamzat's next opponent while traveling, and of course he blurred out who the opponent was. However, the folks on the internet are going to do their research, they're going to do their due diligence, and they're going to tell us exactly what the deal is. So they pieced together this picture based on the shorts, based on the advertisements in the cage, and other elements of the picture, and actually found the frame from the fight. And it's going to be Jared Cannonier, which is what we expected. But now it kind of brings some clarity to the whole situation. And I can't wait for this fight because to me, this is now the number one contenders fight at 185. You know, we just saw what happened with Robert Whittaker and Dricus du Plessis. So now we have some clarity at 185 that Dricus and Izzy are probably going to fight, and there's probably going to be a quick turnaround for DDP. It's going to happen in Australia in September. So come time for UFC 294, which is likely where Hamzat and Jared will fight, we will know exactly who the winner of that fight's opponent is going to be. And so I think 185 in a lot of regards has gotten super exciting over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and now we've got some fresh blood at the top. You know, Izzy ran through the division, and that made it sort of difficult for him to want to stay the champion only at 185. That's why he tried that experiment of going up to 205. It didn't work out for him, but then he came back down, and then I think he had to start fighting people that he'd already beaten once again. And now we're at a point where he wants to fight new people. He wants to fight tough opposition. Izzy's not a coward and he's not a bully. He doesn't want to go in there and beat people up that he's already beat up before. He wants to challenge himself. He wants to dare to be great. And I think that, you know, Robert Whittaker was who I thought was going to win last weekend against Dricus du Plessis. But du Plessis was able to come in there and show us, even though he's an awkward fighter with an unorthodox style, he finds the way to win. He's now 6-0 in the UFC, a great record of like 20-2. And he has earned himself a title shot. And now we've got a mega fight. I mean, everybody kind of knows what happened in the octagon after the pay-per-view this past weekend. Izzy came in there and, you know, did what he did. And I think this fight is actually going to wind up being a mega fight. And Dricus is going to get the title fight that he's always wanted and he's always worked for, but sooner than he even realized he was going to get it. And just like Dricus is a new face for Izzy to fight, we've got Khamzat Chimaev fighting Jared Cannonier, which if Khamzat's able to win, we've got another new face that can now be a number one contender and possibly fight Izzy for his belt.
Yeah, and I think Jared Cannonier is actually a favorable matchup for Khamzat Chimaev. You know, Jared's very powerful. He used to be a heavyweight, so he carries around a lot of muscle on his frame, but he's not really known for his grappling. He does have decent takedown defense, but I think Hamzat is able to and will be able to get Jared to the ground. I think that Hamzat can kind of match him shot for shot on the feet, although you don't want to stand in front of Jared Cannonier and take too many shots unless you're Marvin Vettori and your head is just made out of stone.
Right.
But Khamzat Chimaev did show some heart and some chin in that fight against Gilbert Burns, and most importantly, he showed a little bit of durability, and I expect him to have better durability at 185 than he had at 170 for all the reasons surrounding him and 170 and him having trouble making weight at 170 and all of that. So 185 I think is more natural for his frame. He's actually a little bit taller than Jared, even though Jared may be a little bit more muscular. He may carry around a little bit more on his frame, but that could be to the detriment of Cannonier because carrying around too much muscle can cause you to gas. And when you're fighting a fighter like Khamzat Chimaev, who's just this intense pressure forward grappler who's going to try to break you going 100 miles an hour from the start of the fight to the finish, that can actually come back to bite you in the end. So I think that this is a favorable matchup for Hamzat. Early prediction, I do think he wins, not to discount anything that is Jared Cannonier. He's a very tough opponent. He went all 5 rounds with Israel Adesanya. He just fought for a belt. He looked very good against Marvin Vettori. He's skillful top to bottom, and a win over him is a legit win, and it's absolutely one that makes you the number one contender at 185. So I really can't wait for the fight.
Yeah, me either. And when you talk about Khamzat Chimaev, we're talking about such a rare commodity in the UFC. Gilbert Burns came in and showed us that this guy is human. You know, after his first 4 fights, I think he got touched once or twice in total, which is just insane. The fact that he was in there against UFC opposition and not getting touched and getting these guys out of there in minutes and even taking guys through an entire round and not getting touched by them just speaks volumes to the skill level that Hamzat brings to the cage. But Gilbert Burns is a dog. He's experienced. He's a vet. He knew exactly what he was doing, and he landed some great shots on Khamzat Chimaev and started to have people question, is Hamzat really that good, or did he just get lucky? No, he didn't didn't get lucky 4 times in a row, 5 times in a row. Gilbert Burns is just really good, and Hamzat had to rise to the occasion. But Hamzat came out after that fight and said, I didn't really listen to my coaches. I didn't really stick to my game plan. I should have been more smart with what I was doing. I shouldn't have gone and gotten into a firefight with a dog like Gilbert Burns. And next time I won't do that again. And we've seen Hamzat back in since then, and he's looked really good. I mean, ever since the Gilbert Burns fight, he's pretty much looked flawless. We saw him, against Kevin Holland, which was a crazy turn of events where he wound up in the cage with Kevin Holland. Neither of them trained for each other. But to go in there with a legit black belt like Kevin Holland and do what he did, just shows you the kind of level that he's at. And I agree with you that I think Khamzat Chimaev is probably skill-wise a little bit more advanced than Jared Cannonier. But if he gets touched like he did against Gilbert Burns, but the shots are coming from Jared Cannonier, he might not be able to stay up for all 3 rounds. And I believe it'll be on 294 just like you think. And it's going to be the feature bout, so it'll be a 3-round fight. And so we won't really have to worry so much about Jared Cannonier's gas tank for 4th and 5th round, if it were to go that far. This is a 3-round fight. Hamzat's really good in 3 rounds, but Jared Cannonier has the gas and has the skills to go all 3 rounds with somebody. And I think with the power that he possesses, if Hamzat's not careful, he could wind up, suffering his first loss.
Yeah, I think so. And the interesting thing will be to see if it's the feature bout or if it's the co-main event. Now, Leon did come out and say that him versus Covington is likely to be announced on either 294 or 295 in Madison Square Garden. So I think that will be the determining factor as to whether this is a 5-round fight or a 3-round fight. Obviously, they're not going to do 3 5-round fights in a row. So
Right.
if they do make Leon versus Colby the co-main event for Abu Dhabi, and they make Islam versus, they're talking about Chandler now. So whoever Islam fights at 294, that will likely be the main event. So this would be the 3rd from the last. So given that it would be the feature bout, likely a 3-round fight between those two would be, I think, high pace from start to finish. But I think we would see the gas tank of both men. I don't think either one of them break that easily. So if one of them was able to break the other, that would be really a remarkable thing to see. But I think the most important takeaway from here now is that 185 is super exciting again. Now, Robert Whittaker had to be kind of the sacrificial lamb in the whole scenario because he was the Max Holloway of 185, where he was just knocking off everybody who was a potential threat to Izzy. Now that he's out of the way and DDP and Izzy are going to have their sort of mega fight, that opens up a lot of new challengers that are coming up, like Hamzat. And so if he can get past Jared, it makes things very interesting at 185. And I think that will entice Hamzat to potentially make his belt run in this division rather than go back to 170 and try to get it there, which I had originally thought would be the case.
I agree. Khamzat Chimaev will be a UFC champion, and it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And I think his path to the belt is going to be shorter than it is longer. I think that he gets through Jared Cannonier probably in a war. He's going to have to go in there and really put it on Jared Cannonier to get his hand raised. But I see him doing it. He's got the skills. He's got the game plan. He's matured a bit. And if he does it in Abu Dhabi, which I think it will be, it'll almost feel like a homecoming of sorts, because he did make his debut in Abu Dhabi and then had that cool 9 or 10 day turnaround, did another fight on Fight Island. And it was just a really cool thing for the UFC to have take place. And I feel like if he comes back to Abu Dhabi, he's going to bring us some fireworks again.
Well said.